Welcome to the space where energy, frequency, wisdom, and transformation meet. My name is Brooke Richardson, and I am an energy practitioner, intuitive guide, and hypnotherapist. I am bringing you information, knowledge, practices from around the world from all kinds of different practitioners to help you in your spiritual awakening journey and your holistic well-being. So if this resonates, be sure to like, subscribe, and let's dive in.
When you get married, your chart changes. When you have a child, your chart changes. You have a second child, it changes again, third. So fate is that which is ruled by the stars and the externals. Destiny is where we engage our free will and consciousness. That's why they say with natural therapies, if you're still in it in 5 years' time, you may likely stay in it. If you're not, then you will probably never go back into it.
Do you think that's just because it's not as widely accepted yet?
Well, I mean, in most countries, there are no government programs to support it. If you're a doctor, you can go into a public hospital and have a job. So you have to you basically have to be an entrepreneur, and you have to be prepared to
live as an entrepreneur.
Live as an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur with very strict ethical code. You know, that's the difference. So you got to be prepared to work something else to pay. Often. It's how I met some of my first patients, making coffees and cooking Spanish food. It's an interesting journey, and it's, I believe, part of the initiation as well. You know, how serious do you take this? Do you really want this to be not only a way to make a living, which is actually an interesting thing astrologically. You know, you have your 6th house, which is how you make your living, ruled by Virgo. In ancient astrology, you know, Mesopotamia, Sumeria, that kind of time period, it was called the house of slavery. Yeah. And then you have the 10th house, which is your career. In mundane astrology, that's your career. But if you want to take it to a next step, it's your life calling. And you'll see that on a chart in the midheaven. So when I look back at, you know, when I look at my chart and look at my life journey, I also realized that without knowing anything about astrology, I'd followed certain intuitive calls, let's say that were not perhaps economically sound, if you could say that.
I can understand that journey.
You know, but you know, I had parents who were very supportive and allowed for that, and were intuitive in their own way, and were self-made, and you know, so
that's
understood
part of the
that
karma too, no?
it is definitely. It's all part and parcel. But yeah, you know, I have midheaven, north node, Venus in Virgo. So Virgo is the zodiac of the healer. Often when you align with that midheaven, 10th house energy and the north node, what you choose, you would study anyway. You would be into it anyway, whether you were getting paid for it or not.
Right.
It's your life calling. It's your legacy. It's that which you will leave behind.
Do you see
Tiny
people
events.
who don't follow the calling?
No. I think most people don't follow it.
Okay.
To be honest with you. And to be honest with you, they don't represent my demographic that I see in my clinic.
So what is your demographic?
Well, my demographic, I mean, it's quite wide-ranging. It's, I'd say, mostly Indonesian,
Okay.
but not just, you know, from the whole of Indonesia. A lot from Jakarta, obviously. It's a huge city. And other parts of Indonesia, and of course Bali. And then I have expats and people coming through who hear about me, just word of mouth.
Do you see similar challenges with those foreigners, expats, and those from Indonesia?
No, they're very different. And it's not just foreigners, it's Americans have a certain challenge. French have a certain challenge. You know, Spanish are different, Italians are different, Australians are different. Yeah, they have different challenges. And it's partly, you know, maybe due to the language. So language is a high, I would call it sense. Yeah, it's higher than vision. Hearing is a higher sense than vision in terms of the hierarchy of human consciousness. Human beings having speech took us from an animalistic existence. Nothing wrong with animals, I love them. They've got their language as well, but it's perhaps not as complex as our language. And then you have different languages in the world which have different complexities. And then the ability to actually write that and record it and transmit it took us to another level. So every language, he said, is ruled by something like, he called it a folk spirit, or something akin to almost like an archangel. When you speak a language, you're part of that tribe. It's not what you look like.
Sure.
Yeah. A lot of people are like, oh, well, how do people look? Well, I personally, you know, I'm in Bali. My father's Balinese and my mother's Australian, and God knows what I look like. I definitely don't look Balinese. No Balinese will tell me that I look Balinese. You can make your own, put it in the comments. Where do I look like I come from? I've had everything, you know. And when they'll say, speak to me in English, I'll speak to them in proper Balinese. That's it, you're Balinese. So language is an interesting thing, and listening to people's stories and the language they use in those stories also guides us to different methods. So coming back to, what is that? What is something truly holistic? Well, it takes in the physical, the etheric, the astral, and the spirit. Yeah. And how do we align those bodies to get back on that path that is leading, essentially in a nutshell, if you want to simplify it, the way I look at what I do is, how do we become at least a step closer to our true selves? And the true self is that which dwells in the spirit. Yeah.
And how do you help your clients to become more in alignment?
Well, I employ my canvas of potential protocols. So when somebody comes, they usually have either a physical, emotional, or mental ailment, something that's causing them, let's say, distress, discomfort, dis-ease. And what is that? That is one of their bodies, whether it be, it's very rarely actually the physical body, even though it may manifest physically. It's usually coming from the etheric body or higher up, the astral body perhaps. The body is a map. It gives us everything we need to know, including illnesses. I call diseases, illnesses, suffering, the best teachers, the best guides on the path. So, and when we stray from that path, we'll often start to experience those things. Relationship difficulties, this and that, all sorts of manifestations. And then I will actually, obviously we do a lot of talking and listening to the story. I think that's a very important part of it. And then I'll come in and investigate with kinesiology. So kinesiology for me is one of my most important tools. Okay. You've got really two types of healing. You've got healing through transformation or healing through translocation, which is how most healing happens. Translocation means to move something, to move that biomorphic field that is manifesting that illness. Yeah, you move it. You can move it internally. So taking a headache medication, for example, can then lead to kidneys failing.
I see.
A long time in the future if you do that a lot. So it's often what gives rise to side effects. But really, what does this disease energy or entity, in Bali, they look at them as actual entities traditionally. They even have different forms that are drawn, where the healers used to be able to literally visualize them.
Wow.
Yeah. So different diseases, measles looks like that. And then the way we look at it in Bali is also the 5 different elements. So called in Veda the Pancha Mahabhuta, 5 of the fundamental elements: earth, water, fire, air, and the 5th is ether, which represents actually the self. Yeah. And an imbalance in one of those, actually transforms them from a demonic form. Demonic meaning mainly, they're not necessarily looking, have big teeth and look scary. They can look very nice actually, but it's a form of that saps energy. It's parasitic form. But when you transform them and put them in their correct place, so that energy, let's say the white energy from the east, if it's it should be in the heart and the skin. This is in the Balinese cosmology. If it's in your liver, then it's going to cause trouble.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that's the element of earth. So you move that out of you put it back in its right place, element earth in the heart. There, I lead meditations to explore that, to help guide that process. And then the energy of water goes back to the liver. And what's the main sign of liver disease? Cirrhosis of the liver, hardening of the liver. You put too much earth in your liver, for example. Too much fire and it's burned the water out. Liver goes hard. So, so it's also reorganizing, of those elements, so that so that your body is then a vessel to perform your destiny. A lot of people call it your higher purpose, your life calling. Yes, it's all of those things. But
So do you need all the elements kind of in line in order to?
As best as you can.
I guess it's
really.
all cyclical, no?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who are very ill who are enlightened beings, but they've actually gone past that level. But most of us, we're living in the world, we have things to do. We've got kids to send to school and bills to pay and staff to pay or whatever,
Yeah.
So we need to actually, And I think the more the world develops in a way that's moving further from nature, the more the challenges that are going to be presented to us. And we're going to be dealing with energetic forms that were not around when we were born, which is probably one of the first times in history that that's been the case, because of the leap in technology being so fast. Different energetic, diplomatically call them biomorphic fields, but you could call them entities, beings, whatever. They also come in, So the more we go into this overly materialized world where it's just material, that's just a piece of glass, and a round, and we don't see the subtle realms beyond that, the more we lose touch with the other potentials that could be coming in, and the more we actually become susceptible to them. So having ourselves aligned and conscious of that. And I also believe in, not just giving a treatment and then saying, good luck and see you next month. It's also, I try to build as much as I can into a consult time, a little bit of a conversation about that if people are not familiar.
Right.
And I make sure that when I share knowledge on a larger scale with groups, etc., that we do talk about those fundamentals, because the basic fundamentals, I wasn't taught that in university. You don't learn that.
No.
Yeah.
Would be helpful.
I was raised in a culture that recognized that it's the norm. It's normal here. A lot of the great teachers were about that. That was what alchemy was about. Was always about those three elements: the soul, the spirit, and the body. And how do we extract them from a plant and apply them to an illness or a person?
Right.
Or how do we make gold from lead? Which is apparently that was literal, but it was also metaphoric.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Tjok Gde.
My
I
pleasure.
really appreciate it. Any
Thank you.
final advice for anyone out there on their healing journey?
Listening to the voice of the true self, and sometimes just knowing that. And there are many, many different techniques. There are many roads that lead to that path, but you actually have to have that intention first. And we often forget about that, about what is it that we're really looking for in life? What is, why do I do this job? What is this all about? Don't get me wrong, I forget about that a lot myself. You get lost in life, you get lost in tasks and all of this, but having a moment every day to come back and get in touch with that side of yourself, which is the true self, which is beyond the emotional play, beyond the stories, beyond the facades. And in Bali we say that spirit lives in here, just below the sternum. Take a moment, just, you'll never have full silence, just accept that, but you can at least
Set aside the time.
set something aside for that. And also, one of our big challenges, very simple one, is sun. We need sun. Sun is, it's an essential nutrient. It's an essential part of our life. And we are getting more and more detached from sun. And there's a whole fear about sun. Sunburns, skin cancer, this and that. And you know what? Don't be silly about it. But
Right.
there are techniques, there are ways. One of them is getting up at sunrise,
That's
or a little
amazing
bit
here in
before.
Bali.
Yeah,
And in
exactly.
the open air, it's
Yeah.
so different.
Yeah.
Than,
Go out and get some sun.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Tjok Gde.
My pleasure,
And
Brooke.
comment below your biggest takeaways. I know I have a lot of inspiration from our talk and from our healing together. So,
Thank you.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you for being in this space of energy and expansion. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe for more wisdom and content. Until next time, land the light.